Black people and Latinos have to be brought in from now, not after the fact. I'm Lisa Osborne. I'm the Director of Emerging Media for Black Public Media. Black Public Media is a 40-year-old film nonprofit that funds Black content and supports Black filmmakers. We have deep ties to the public media ecosystem in the U.S. We're primarily funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We are part of a minority consortia that includes equivalent organizations that serve Latino filmmakers, Asian American filmmakers, Native American filmmakers, and Pacific Islander filmmakers. So it's called the National Minority Consortia, and all of us sort of, loosely collaborate throughout the year. I started working in tech in '95. My first tech job was at Turner Network Television, helping them launch their first original content website. In terms of VR, I saw my first VR piece in 2012 at Sundance. It was part of the New Frontier program. It was Nani de la Peña's piece called Hunger in Los Angeles. And it was with this ginormous, bulky, I don't remember, did you have a haptic thing on? I can't even remember. I just remember putting on like because I have a photo of me with it, and I just remember it being a lot of stuff. The piece, basically you're in downtown Los Angeles, and I think it's a man is nearby and he drops to the ground. What was interesting when she was showing the piece is that some people would automatically drop down to their knees and start reaching out to the person, which, remember, there's no person, and it's not a live action film. It's not photorealistic. It's animation, and it's very crude animation at that. And it still was making people have a visceral reaction like, oh, I need to do something. And the other reaction that she said she got a lot was that people would start crying. And for me, it was like, oh, interesting. Because at that point, I was at AFI at the incubator from like 2006 to like 2009. And then I had been an independent consultant by that point for about 3 years. And I was seeing all sorts of things. And so I had no idea VR was going to become a thing. But the thing is, in the course of a year, you get exposed to so many different types of storytelling and so many different tech experiments, I'll call them. And so you never know what's going to actually blow up. I just think it's wonderful that, storytellers have like new mediums to play with. It's like, walking into an art room and there's like acrylics, there's oils, there's colored pencil, there's, paper, there's glue. There's just all this stuff you can use to tell great stories. And I think that's what excites me. And I just want to make sure that Black talent has the same access that other talent has to those tools and gets introduced to them now while they're in their infancy, rather than 3 to 5 years or 3 to 7 years from now, after the tipping point has happened where VR has gone mainstream. Black people and Latinos have to be brought in from now, not after the fact. Coming from the West Coast, where I'd been based for almost 10 years, to realize that I had been sort of living in a bubble when it came to these things, and that I needed to figure out how to serve the East Coast Black creative community, especially the filmmaking community. So we came up with a 3-part strategy that the executive director, Leslie Fields Cruz, and I have sort of put in place, where phase 1, we're going to focus on exposing as many Black creatives as possible to VR. We have created a mixer here in New York City, which probably every 8 weeks or so, we're gonna gather people somewhere in the city and show them VR, and then talk about it afterward. The second thing we've decided to do is we go to Black spaces and Black events and do a pop-up VR theater. Our first pop-up VR theater was at Essence Festival. We showed people VR. We ended up showing a little over 100 people VR. And out of the 100 people, 5 people had seen VR ever before. And out of those 5 people, only 3 of them were Black. So that kind of speaks to the lack of general audience awareness of virtual reality storytelling. And phase 2 will be focused on education. When you start to get serious about VR and you really want to educate yourself, that the classes range anywhere from like $300 to about $2,000. And for a lot of people, especially in the Black filmmaking community or the Black creative community, those are price points that are out of they're not accessible for them. So to address that gap or that barrier, because the whole focus of our strategy is to lower or eliminate barriers to entry into the VR industry, I am going to either create those 101 like 3-hour intro to VR workshops. We'll either make one from scratch or we'll draft off existing VR courses that exist in the city. So if there is like a $500 intro to VR course that's over a weekend, for example, let's say there are 10 slots in that class, I might buy 3 seats and then basically deeply discount them for the filmmakers in our community that would apply to get those seats. In regards to our last phase, which will be funding, which is the thing that Black Public Media normally would do as a film organization, when it comes to VR and 360 films, we're probably going to start doing some tests. Like, we have an incubator coming up for filmmakers. We're probably going to start testing to see how we could add VR to that incubator program, because at the end of the incubator program, we have a pitch competition called Pitch Black, where you could win up to $100,000 for your project. And whatever we learn during this upcoming incubator will allow us to officially add some VR slots or slots for VR filmmakers to our 2020 incubator. We know we can't reach every Black creative. We know we can't scale at the levels that need to happen in order for a change to happen rapidly. What I'm hoping is that we inspire other organizations, whether they're educational institutions or art museums, film organizations, art schools, things like that, to also do pop-up VR screenings or start a mixer that's focused on VR filmmaking.